Welcome to the Beauties and Beasties podcast with Alex and Sean.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, young man. How are you?
I'm doing very well. You didn't do your weather girl trick today. You weren't sort of like...
I know, because you told us off last week, so I'm going to be very, very studious. I'm going to do it correctly.
Studious. That's a good word. What does that mean, Sean?
It means you're sitting there like a naughty schoolboy waiting to be told off. I am aware of this.
It's a good explanation. That is absolutely
very good. How's your week been out?
My week's been good. My week's been good. It's been busy. I prefer busy weeks over quiet weeks. I like to be doing things at the end of the day. So yeah, it's the busier I am, the happier I am is the general rule of thumb. So yeah, there we go. It's been good.
Good. What have you actually been up to this week, or can you not tell us?
I can't go into it. It's just it's a new role at the end of the day. It's I was technically I'm 6-7 weeks into the role, so not that long. The first month, the first 4 and a bit weeks was all shadowing Sharon as she was departing BSF. So just trying to sponge as much information from her in a month as I possibly could. And then the last, now 2 weeks, it's been flying solo, and I think it's been going good so far. Not been told otherwise. Everyone seems largely happy with me. So long may that continue. But I've been very much enjoying it. It's been it's just been a whole new world to try and get my head around, which is fantastic at the end of the day. It's just really good fun to do. So hopefully you'll be seeing me at some regional shows here, there and everywhere supporting Mr. Lawrence, but also get to go global soon, so I get to go and explore the world and bring pest management to, or just learn how it's done everywhere else and bring some of that back again. So that should be exciting. So watch this space. I'll be able to regale you with stories of my exploits around the globe. I'll be the Phileas Fogg of pest management. There's a reference not many people are going to get at all, if anybody. Let's be fair. So, all right, that boring. You've just decided to bugger off, have you?
Hugh just pointed out. Do you know what it is? There's nothing on them boards that's important, but it's a good habit to get into to not have stuff up there. I should maybe put them over the other side. Probably will. In fact, I'm looking at them. They're going to go over the other side, so they'll go there. Yeah. Well,
this reminds me of a story you told us a while back, actually, talking of signs up in places. This came up on a previous podcast, so I'm sure you can talk about it. But the time that you had signs, all of your staff, you were able to put signs up everywhere, and that just went horribly wrong.
I can't even remember what that story was, to be fair. You'll have to remind us.
Oh, if we can't remember it, it's not worth talking about, is it?
Exactly,
but how was your week? And if you mention bees, I think
that's all. That's why, to be honest with you, that's why I asked you what you were doing, because that's exactly what's happened. So it's funny in that, from a business point of view, the correct process for us is to have maybe 1 or 2 jobs ready to go to. So 1 booked in for next week, 1 booked in for the week after would be about right. And when I'm in that position, I always panic, because I think, if we don't have anything after that, then what we're going to do? And then we get to a point like today where I booked 4 surveys in today, which will probably all turn into jobs. And then someone else has been on the phone tonight about another one, which will be a big one. I'm waiting for 2 more to come. One of them's booked in. It's got to get through the conservation officer. There's another one for a hospital, which is 2 colonies. They'll want that doing at some point. And you end up with a lot to manage, which really I should be happier in the 2 to go to and everything running smoothly. But like you, I'm a lot more comfortable and a lot happier when we have an awful lot booked in. So yeah, we've done a few this year already, and it looks like we're going to have a fair few more to do. So we will be, we'll have a good year. Well, I think we'll have a good year anyways, which is nice because there is no wasps. Where they gone, Alex?
Oh, well, I mean, do you want me to talk about wasps? But very quickly, the whole sort of like getting jobs in, I found with the consultancy, especially, so when I was running that it was on average, the conversion rate was about one job in every four leads, which was quite interesting because you'd get a flurry of leads in, you get a flurry of jobs in, and only about one in four of those would actually convert some work. So you kind of always felt like you were on the cusp of being really busy, but it was never a guarantee. It was quite an interesting mindset to have yourself in, which is being prepared like a coiled spring at any given moment, and yet sort of like being prepared to have to deal with that inevitable sort of like 1 in 4 ratio. But yeah, so wasps. You want to know about wasps? You want to know about wasps? You want me to tell you a little thing about wasps?
Yeah, there isn't any, is there? I tell you what, it makes me glad that we do not rely upon them because I've seen some lads who are in total panic mode at the minute, you know.
It's interesting, isn't it? And the weird thing is this used to be very normal in the sense that you used to be able to set your watch by wasps. You'd have a bumper year, you'd have a fallow, a fallow year, then you'd have an all right year, and then you'd have a bumper year again, and it would end up coming around. And there's actually a bit of there's two reasons why this could be, and no one's really kind of like put it down and figured it out why. But the idea could be it used to be moderate year, bumpy year, and then fallow year. And there's a couple of reasons for this. And one of the schools of thought is when you have a really big year, you end up making a lot of queens. And so with that, when you make a lot of queens, the following year they tend to all outcompete each other. And so you end up getting a lot of very sort of like sad nests, and a lot of them don't make it all the way through the year. And so you end up sort of like they become too big to support themselves. They just throw out too many queens, and it kind of collapses, and then it brings itself back up again and back up again, and then it collapses down on itself. Um, but we kind of like saw a complete shift in that whole trend. And my belief, although very hard to substantiate, was it kind of coincided with some changes in farming practice. So the chemicals being used, the kind of crops being used, the agricultural practices, because almost I think the number is 70% or something of our wasp nests are nothing to do with people's homes at all. They're nothing to do with urban environments. They're all out in rural environments. They're all in hedgerows and underground and in fields and places like that. And so actually, we do a very good job as pest managers at eliminating every wasp nest from house and shop and roof tile and wherever you might have it. So if they were the only wasps that ever existed in the world, we would have the problem licked, in 15 minutes flat. The fact is, most of them actually live out there, and we recruit in from them every year. But with changes in how farming's done, there probably was fewer of those out in the fields, changes in practice from land management through to pesticide use, through to crop selection, etc., etc. Just simply reduced the number of those exterior nests, which meant that we recruited less in, or at the very least, the prediction of those recruitments was significantly less predictable. So that's my thought. It's just a combination of the two, and it'll be interesting to see next year, after this year, what we're actually going to be looking at. Because if you remember, at the beginning of this year, at the very beginning of this year, there were people saying, "Oh, I'm still doing wasp nests in February." End of January, beginning of February, you had people putting pictures of wasp nests up, and everyone was predicting it was going to be mental. However, here we are. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I find it quite funny the fact that everyone's been flapping. This is going to be the year that we practice all of our non-bendiacarb related strategies. I'm going to practice using permethrins. I'm going to practice using pyrethroids. I'm going to practice using a big stick. What was it that Andy referred to them as last week? The danger pinatas. Um, practice all of my different, and of course, it means that nobody, while we have this little grace period, nobody's getting an opportunity to practice at all. So next year is going to be pandemonium as everyone figures out what they're meant to be doing again. So that could be funny. funny spelt with a capital ha ha ha. So yeah.
Yeah. I think I just worry for the lads who rely on them, because if you miss a summer, then effectively you're going 2 years without any sort of real income into your business, aren't you? If you go from the summer of 2023 through to the summer of 2025, you're almost going 2 years with no real money coming in. So I do
To
feel for
be
them. The
harsh,
question is, if the FICAM isn't used this year, are people going to be responsible enough to not use it next year?
well, the thing is you can always return it to your distributor and manufacturer for disposal. I think that's part of the terms. Can you not?
You can. The question is, I'm not saying what we can and can't do. The question is, what will they do? What will the vast majority
Okay.
of pest controllers do if they find themselves with a 6 kilo of FICAM in the summer of 2025? Are they sending it back to the distributor, or are they just going to blast through it and get rid of it?
I am going to take the road here that I'm going to say absolutely that the pest controllers that I know and love will all responsibly make the switch from bendiacarb to their alternatives at the cut-off date. Yes, they will.
I think they're going to stockpile it, and it just means instead of them running out at the end of 2025, they'll run out at the end of 2026. That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, I'm going to take the opposite to that. I have faith and belief in the system.
Well, let's see. Anyways, let's ask Billy. So we have a guest on tonight, a young chap by the name of Billy McPherson. He's going to come on and give us a quick introduction into himself. He's looking very studious tonight as well. I think everyone will agree. Evening, Billy.
I'm loving studious. I'm going to write
that's
that
the
down.
word.
I'm going to use that
Yeah.
every day next week.
Yeah.
We're
gonna
going
be
to need
honest
to be
with you,
quick, because I'm on Piers Morgan at 9 o'clock, so you're going to need to be quick with us.
Are you generally on Piers Morgan at 9 o'clock?
Yeah, Joe Rogan at 10.
Okay. See, for a second there, I thought, yeah, well, that's you bunch of. I was about to compliment your accent and everything. I was about to say the way you say studious
You
just
still
sounds
can.
absolutely
You still
fabulous.
can. Yeah.
No, I feel like I don't want to anymore. So, how are you doing, Billy? For those who do not know you, who is Billy McPherson?
I am the sole employee of Scotica Wildlife Solutions. I've been in the industry since 2004. I realised the other day, which is quite frightening. I spent my misspent youth catching rabbits and moles and rats and squirrels and mink round about my local golf course. And the last time I was employed, I worked for an insurance company in a call centre in Uddingston near Glasgow, which was just awful. And I responded to a job advert from a large national pest control company who will no name. Not the one everyone will think, another one. And that started my career in public health pest control. And I was thrown in at the deep end, unqualified, with no real experience, I suppose, in Edinburgh city centre, which was probably the best and worst education that I could have had for 6 months. But I remember having been like a pest controller in my own mind, having snared and ferreted and caught rabbits and rats and mink and all sorts, thinking I'm really going to learn something. You know, I've made it in life. I've joined a national pest control company. This is it. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong.
Dear.
Why were you wrong then? Let's drill into that a bit. What were you expecting and what did you get?
Because they're two very different things. A lot of guys in this industry and women may have come into it through, I know, Sean, you're a dog guy, may have come into it through their love of field sports or pest control of some kind, you know, be it rat catching, ferreting, shooting men, you name it. There's a lot of us in here. And once you get into the nitty gritty of public health pest control, it's just not the same thing, you know. This industry, especially at national company level, they're two very different beasts, you know. Our customers, you know, at the time I thought I was going to be doing nothing but running about catching rabbits and moles and mink and squirrels and stuff. And you know, when I discussed that with some of my colleagues when I first started in the industry, they looked at you like you had two heads, you know. They were like, "What's a mink?" You know. And there was aspects of wildlife stuff. There always is with national companies, but when you're new to it, you know, it's very. You suddenly realise how naive you've been.
Yeah, it is a bit of a world apart, isn't it? I'm racking my brains at the moment to try and think of any of the big service companies, you know, of which there are now more than there were a couple of years back, who actually seriously engage with wildlife management rather than public health pest control. And it's done as a bit of an addendum if you're asked, or if the person has the right sort of like wallet size and shape. But generally speaking, no, there's not a huge amount of it, is there? I don't think I've
No.
ever seen a one of the top 5 liveried vans sat outside a field, you know, checking mink traps before. I think it's
Yeah.
not something that's done. So with that, and with that question, you know, you say it's a huge learning curve. It was something interesting and fun to do. How long did you stick with that then? You say 6 months, but was it
Well,
just
no,
6 months
I
and
was
then you
at,
went to do your own thing?
I was in that patch for 6 months, and it was Edinburgh City Centre, which, you know, it taught me a load of stuff. I dealt with rats, I dealt with city mice, you know, cockroaches, bed bugs, you name it. So it was probably one of the best educations. But I mean, I'm saying it was one of the best educations. I think that was the last time I done a bed bug job. You know, was what 15 years ago, 16 years ago. But it gave me a good insight. And when you get into this industry, it's not all about pest control as well. It's about you know, I was a relatively young guy at the time. It was about, you know, working out how national companies work, how service companies work, building relationships with service clients when you're at their premises and stuff like that. You know, and it was a real eye opener. It really was.
So would you
As I said,
say, sorry. Oh,
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, I'm about to say there's that tiny lag here, so I apologise. I kind of jumped in on you there. But I mean, you say that it was an education learning about rats and mice and, you know, bed bugs from a jump
Yeah.
start. But listening to you there, was it actually? Do you reckon you got more value out of seeing how a business is run before you started your own company? I mean, did you
No,
get value from
no,
that? Nope.
no. I
Or
got
not.
the technical value, I think, from dealing with
Hmm.
the different pests. And again, like city mice, for example, you know, I would never have known city mice were a thing if I had never had that start off in that first 6 months. As far as running the business was concerned, if you're running my business, it's a totally different thing because I'm a small, kind of independent one-man band. National companies are completely different. I'm not saying I never took any value for realising how national companies work. I definitely did. But would I run my business like that? No.
It's an interesting thing, and this is something that I've been discussing with, you know, just off and on with people for a little while now, which is everyone, when people start up in pest management and start their own company, they focus on what's the important thing you need to learn about. Well, I need to learn how to do a wasp nest, or I need to learn how to do a rat feeder, I need to learn how to do, you know, put X, Y, and Z down, and what's the difference between diphenocum and bromidilone and diphenylilililone. But in reality, actually, that's all stuff that you can learn. I think one of the biggest issues is nobody teaches us how to run a business. You know,
Yeah,
who told you how to fill out a tax return? Who told you what information needs to go on an invoice? Whoever
yeah,
explained to you why, you know, POs are important? All of this stuff. This is
100%,
the information that is lacking, and that you kind of
100%. Yeah.
feel that. Yeah. So who taught you that? You know, who taught you that? Because of course you went and set up your own business. So how did you learn all of that?
So when I left that first company, I was recruited by a smaller company, solely to fly birds of prey for bird control. I had known birds of prey for years. I had hunted with birds of prey, and it wasn't until I joined the large national company that I realised that this is a thing. Target falconry bird control is, it's a service. That got me thinking. I was really unhappy in the position I was in, and I was recruited by a smaller company to solely fly birds. I'd done that for nearly a year, and the work itself was fantastic. I could do it with my eyes closed. A lot of the things which target falconry needs are completely transferable for what I knew for falconry anyway. I had a bit of experience about dealing with clients in a service company kind of way. So that all very well. I started to learn a bit more about risk assessments, method statements, stuff like that. Because in the smaller company, we had to do that ourselves. I'm saying a small company, there was like 4 employees, all falconry guys, little bit of routine pest control on the side. So I started to kind of know more about that, and then we were, myself and a colleague of mine at that company were recruited for a second large national pest control company for a specific job, which was a large-scale rabbit cull on an island on Shetland in Scotland. So we were employed solely to complete that employed full-time. It was an extremely lucrative contract for an oil company. And they took us on, knowing that we were paid for a couple of years through that contract alone, and let's try sell some more wildlife and hawking stuff while we've got them, type thing. And because the national company, they were very, very, let's be right, national companies are just sales machines. They're very, very sales focused. I remember doing a presentation when I joined that company, which to me was just routine bird control stuff. And they were all sitting there, wide-mouthed and wide-eyed, as if I had just landed on planet Earth and was speaking a new language to them. So because we were kind of trailblazing that at the time, the wildlife stuff and the hawking stuff, they gave us free rein on stuff like risk assessments, method statements. We were more involved with the technical team at that company, who would kind of come out on jobs with us, because like a ferreting job, for example, they had just never done before, so they never had an SOP for it. They never had a risk assessment method statement for it. So that's probably where I kind of learned that stuff. But at the same time, I'm 15 years self-employed now, and I'm still learning that stuff at the moment. I still get new clients in. I'm dealing with clients who are, our largest airports, oil terminals, air traffic services, waste management sites, and they all have different requirements, different needs, different health and safety managers with their own interpretations. So it's a constant learning curve. And as a small business, one of the things I have learned is to outsource and delegate when it's stuff that you literally just do not know about.
Yeah.
And I joined the Federation of Small Businesses. I hope I'm allowed to name drop in here. I don't know. They're not a business.
This isn't
really.
the BBC. Name drop as you like.
Nah. You'll regret that later. And again, they're just like it's an association of small businesses like mine. And right now, my risk assessments and method statements are written by a guy who used to work offshore and do them for the likes of BP and Esso and Shell and stuff. So they are shit hot, So I'm always learning about that kind of thing. And to be fair, as far as paperwork and that kind of thing goes, it's still one of my biggest bugbears. I mean, I'm a pest controller. I'm not a businessman. I've been very fortunate in some of the clients that I've worked for and continue to work for. And I think my business has been successful so far because I'm a pest controller, and I've not got that kind of sales, business mentality sometimes. you know, the first thing I want to discuss with a client is how to solve their pest problem rather than, you know, the intricacies of how much it's going to cost or things like that, you know.
It's interesting to hear that because everyone has a different USP with that, isn't it? Different approach, different ethos, different company style. And speaking to you, and then of course we had Sean from Pest Force on previously, and we've had other guys. Everyone has, you know, their different way of doing things. So with that, I mean, just out of interest and to learn just a little bit more about you and your company, what is your USP? What is your unique selling point? What that you bring that distinguishes you from everyone around you?
See, nothing. The USP thing I get, but it's very, I don't know, that's business chat as far as I'm concerned. I'm a pest controller and I do a wide variety of pest control, very diverse. I do from target falconry, bird control, deer management, you know, all mammals. I work for ecologists, to local authorities, to waste management companies, to domestic clients. Is that a USP, really? No.
Well, wildlife
Watching.
management and conservation. Yeah, I'd say that's, you know, irregular in terms of the standard offering of the pest management community. So yeah, I mean, I don't know many people in my area who will do deer, for example. Maybe one or two,
But
not everyone.
pest management and kind of my view is it's so diverse anyway. I mean, you know, I had a funny chat with an ecologist client of mine the other week there, and he was saying, you know, ecologists sometimes, a lot of the time, pretend to be pest controllers, and a lot of pest controllers pretend to be ecologists. You know, because both of those fields are very relevant and what we need to provide for our customers. Ecology's, a lot of it is data gathering. We do a shitload of that. And at the end of the day, once an ecologist has gathered his data, sometimes they need a guy with a gun or a wildlife management plan or something like that, you know. And it's so diverse. I mean, you'll see social media has been a big eye opener for me. You know, I've been self-employed 15 years, and you get new companies and new guys appearing all the time. And there's a lot of, you know, I think it's one of the most cutthroat industries I've ever viewed ever.
Really?
Absolutely. But I mean, what is a pest controller to some people? You know, national account customers, you know, top tier customers like, you know, your supermarkets and things. They're looking for data because data is power. You know, if they end up in court, they want the data. They're not overly concerned with, you know, are you able to come and catch this rat that's running about our loading bay type thing? You know, as long as they've got the data to say that you did, they're happy. You know. Whereas, you know, where would the data gathering be for, you know, Mr. McDonald down the road who's got a mole in his garden? It's completely pointless, you know. So it's so diverse now, pest control, you know, and a lot of guys give each other a hard time. Box checkers, for an example, get a really hard time in the industry in general. But, you know, sometimes box checking is exactly what the client wants, you know. Sometimes they want those boxes to be checked and they want their treatment report. You know, and other guys will get a hard time, you know, for being bait chuckers. You know, there are some times where using rodenticide bait is the only option, you know. It's so diverse, and as I say, I think a lot of the industry give each other a hard time, just because it might not be, like, as I said earlier, I've never done a bed bug job in 15 years, you know. Probably couldn't tell you how to go about it in an efficient manner. But I've got an extremely successful business, you know, so who's wrong if I got involved in a discussion about it online, you know?
It's interesting you say that, and I've mentioned this story before, and I'll trot it out again. But year ago, 2 years ago, I hosted a meet and greet for all of the local pest controllers based in Stoke, Hampshire, and I tried to phone around people, and I had varying degrees of success when it actually came to people wanting to turn up. But in the end, we probably got about 12, 15 people turned up. And it was amazing because I hired out a little village hall, just a little square room, and I made everyone bacon butties. And somehow 12 pest controllers all managed to stand in a different corner of a square room. And it was incredible. Like, everyone stood down. I was like,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
you know, you got your bacon butty, you got your tea and your
Yeah.
coffee. Why aren't you
Yeah.
chatting? And they're like, oh, because he's my main
Because he's pissed
competitor.
me off.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, guys, and you, as you say, pest management is a really diverse industry that's very loosely held together by
Yeah.
rats, mice, cockroaches, and bed bugs. And then
Yeah.
there's all of this other stuff around the outside that we
Yeah.
specialize in. I was just like, you know, what do you do? And he's like, oh, you know, I do rats, mice, and moles. Oh, what do you do? Well, of course, I do rats, mice, but I also do wasp nests and bed bugs. I was like, right, well, do you do bed bugs? Nope. Do you do moles? Nope. What do you do when you get a phone call from there? Oh, I just put the phone down. Nah, not anymore. What do you do now? So yeah, it is a super cutthroat industry, but I think that's a really short-sighted, a plan. And there's always more to be had in cooperation than there is in competition.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
yeah.
So some of my really most lucrative contracts and jobs have been through subcontract work with other pest controllers. I'm doing a big job now for a national company, helping them out with some work that they've got. Loads of small businesses round about me have came to me, and I suppose you could argue, you know, there's limited people who do hawking and stuff, but not just for hawking. You know, your live ammunition stuff, your live catch trapping stuff. You know, some people are comfortable being in their lane doing wasp nests, doing bedbug treatments, you know, doing routine rat and mouse jobs. If they get a phone call for a squirrel job or a fox job, they would rather sub it out to someone else. And again, one of the other biggest recommendations I would give to anybody coming into this industry as a one-man band is network and speak to the other pest controllers. The stuff you learn as well is colossal, you know. Yeah. I went on a kill germ marketing course, God, 5-6 years ago now, down in where was it? In the Midlands somewhere. And I met another pest control company at that meeting who were based in Glasgow, who had probably never bumped into before, who have made a ridiculous amount of money off since being subcontracted hawking work. And, you know, when they're overly busy doing the odd routine and catching the odd job for them. That would never have happened if I didn't decide to go on a marketing course, you know.
And as you say, it's the networking opportunities of these courses which are just as valuable as the course itself sometimes. It's like
absolutely.
We all sit there and we have a bit of a joke about getting your CPD points for going to a breakfast meet or eating a bacon butty at a trade show or a regional, you know, that's run by the associations. But there's a lot to be getting out of that by just talking, you know, not just to the people who are presenting, but to the people who are coming to listen as well. Sometimes you get to see fun folks down there. Sean, you frequent those often as well. But you mentioned there, I mean, I see Sean's got questions lined up, but I'm just going to ask one quick one because, of course, we were recommended to speak to you many moons ago by Mr. Blair.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So how much work do you know, talking of cooperation, talking of collaboration, how much do you actually do with Stuart?
Me and Stuart are very good close friends. We shoot a lot together recreationally. We didn't do anything professionally together. Stuart's one of these guys, and I'll probably do this to death later on. He's probably one of the most capable pest controllers I know in this country, and one of the biggest advocates of kind of non-toxic pest control. But he never quite seems to get on because of the, I don't know, I'm didn't want to get myself in trouble here, but he works for a fairly large company. And in my experience and in my opinion, with large companies, they get to a certain extent where you can't have quality and quantity. You get one or the other. with Pest Control and with maybe even any service company. And Stuart's he's a shit hot pest controller, but sales are king with some companies, you know. I don't know if this is just my experience or if other guys can maybe relate, but there may be guys listening who work for larger companies. You can have a guy who's been in pest control 20 years, who's an expert in, you know, routine pest control, has worked for a large national for 20 years, and he's suddenly in the hierarchy of importance and credibility is upstaged by someone that was selling toothpaste last week when they come in as a surveyor. You know, that, you know, I didn't want to be confrontational, but that is rife in this industry. And there are so many. I would say the top 4 pest control guys that I know in the UK at the moment hold basic to mediocre places within their companies, and that's just wrong. I didn't understand it. I do understand it. I know why it is. Sales are king, you know, and it will be argued that if the sales guys are not selling what they are, there'll be no jobs or work for the technicians. Fine, but yeah. Stuart's a good pal of mine, very knowledgeable about technology these days that we use routinely, thermal imaging, night vision. He gets gifted with a lot of really good stuff. He's got his YouTube channel and stuff where he shares all that knowledge, and that's what this industry should be about, is sharing knowledge rather than about like what Alex was talking about, everyone standing in their corner, you know. He loves his non-toxic trapping, as do I. So we're good friends, and he's a nightmare with drinking him. But as far as rat catching is concerned, without a doubt, he's probably one of the most competent guys in this industry.
Yeah, I was very lucky to. I was giving a course I was giving a course for the BBCA couple of it was October last year, and I was already up in Edinburgh. And on the last day of the course, I booked an extra day, sort of like in the hotel.
Yeah. I was supposed to be there.
Yeah, you were supposed to be there. That's kind of why I'm bringing it up.
Well, when you're in demand, Alex, you can't always be there.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, I ended up going, and it turned out actually it was probably one of the worst nights for shooting. It was windy, it was noisy. There was about 8 rats in total, and the following night he put up a video of a nice clear night, and there was about 400 of them stacked up like turtles.
It's always the same when you agree to take anyone anywhere. It's always the same. It will be the worst night for flying a bird, for shooting rats, foxes, deer, you name it.
Yeah. But as you say, he's a phenomenally knowledgeable bloke, and we just ended up just sitting and chatting about everything for hours. So yeah, great that we've actually got a recommendation on, and more so, I actually thought that you guys would have worked. You know, being so close together, you would have sort of worked. But it's interesting to hear that you just, you know,
no, we met each other through. I mean, we're all shooting guys anyway. You know, I was a recreational hunter and, you know, shooting and that before that, and so was Stuart before he got involved in the industry. So you know, we met through our love of that, and we just both happened to be in the same industry, you know. And you know, Stuart's worked for a few different companies now. He's very experienced in the industry. So from my point of view, being a one-man band, it's great to bounce ideas off each other, you know. You know, we speak most days. He will tell me what he's been up to, what he's caught. You know, we often send each other pictures over our lovely black cat traps and what we've got in black cat traps, and all sorts, and have a good laugh over jobs which maybe haven't went so well, like what I was talking to you about earlier. But again, a lot of guys who might be listening probably came into the industry through the same thing. There's, especially in the last few years, I think there's been an influx, especially in my area, of guys who have been shooting men, or, you know, outdoors guys who have took early retirement and set up in pest control, which is great. But I'll tell you something, it really gripes me when they put up on their websites that they've been established for 20 years just because they've shot their first squirrel 20 years ago, you know. Really gripes me.
It's that difference between, and you see them, and I was actually just chatting to some folks about this, when you see people looking for permissions to shoot, and they'll basically say, hey, you know, do you want free pest control on your farm?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not pest control. It is, you know, a form of population suppression. But if you're turning up there once a month, to just plink a couple of rats, that's not pest control. That's just you having some hobby shooting. And I remember I got into so I was doing some field trials down my way, down over by Andover, and there's one farm that was absolutely riddled. It was just this great big hay store, and as you imagine, hay store right next to a cattle shed. Hundreds of rats kicking about, and so I used it as an opportunity to do a field trial down there. And you know, it literally was a slam dunk because they'd moved the cattle out. The rats were all looking for somewhere to eat and to go, and so perfect opportunity to field trial. Great. And one day I went down there, and this guy basically taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Are you the guy putting all the bait down?" I was like, "Yes." He's like, "You've ruined my, you know," like, I was doing the pest control down. You've absolutely ruined it for me. There's no more rats to shoot. I used to come down every, like, the first of every month, and I used to shoot 50, 60 rats without fail. And now there's none to shoot. And I was like, if you used to shoot 50 or 60 rats without fail in this relatively small confined area, what were you doing?
When air guns were licensed in Scotland, myself and probably a lot of other guys in the industry probably thought, you know, we're about to clean up here. We're about to make some serious money, because all the guys that were shooting, you know, feral pigeons and rats and stuff in their workplaces and stuff were about to be, you know, if they had a criminal record, they were done. And if anything, it went the other way. I've got a lot of waste management clients, transfer stations, landfills, local authority waste management and things like that. And there was a period of time for probably about, you know, 6 to 8 months where every time I walked in, they're like, "We've had this guy on the phone. He says he's a fully licensed pest controller and he wants to come and shoot rats for free." And I'm like, "He's just got an air gun license. It's fine. He's not a pest controller, you know." But they use the airgun licensing as an excuse to make themselves more professional. And it still happens the odd time, you know. It still happens the odd time. In fact, I did lose a contract to a guy that done that. It was a contract at it was a rugby park in Scotland, and one of their board members was a recreational air rifle shooter who, once he got his license, decided to control the feral pigeons himself. So it happens.
Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Sean, take over. I'm going just about to explode.
Sure. You said something there about, well, obviously you heard about the good stuff. Tell about a couple of the times it's went wrong, Billy, because they're always the learning ones, aren't they?
How long have you got? We've only got an hour.
Go on, what's your lowest point?
Oh my God.
Just to cheer things up.
Are you talking about in my career in general, or like jobs where it's went really wrong?
I don't know. You tell me.
I'll give you a couple of good ones. When the Scottish Parliament was being built, I worked for that first pest control company where I was in for 6 months, and they had the contract for the Scottish Parliament at the time. And it was all over the news at the time that the roof had fell in during construction. These beams were hanging above, which is now the chamber where all the MSPs and the First Minister sits. And there was a no-kill policy, still is a no-kill policy at the Scottish Parliament. And I got sent in on 2 occasions because it's relatively close to the city centre. Both occasions were an absolute fucking disaster. at a place where the Daily Record have an office, the Sun newspaper has an office, the Daily Mail has an office. The first time was for a herring gull chick which had fell off the roof. Me being a green technician, not knowing any policies because I hadn't been told. They had corralled it into a porta cabin. Mum's going daft outside, dive bombing everyone that comes within a 100-metre radius, trying to kill people. So I got sent in with my technician's bag to sort this problem out. And the only thing I had in the bag was a hammer.
No.
Sean's laughing because he knows what's coming. So I managed to take the herring gull chick, which was maybe about a week off of fledging, into the porta cabin, and I'm trying to phone my boss. What do I do with this? And he's no answering. And there's a crowd gathering outside the porta cabin, and this thing starts screaming its nut off. So it was humanely dispatched, is all I'm going to say, which was legal under the general license at the time. And then my phone rings, and it's my boss phoning me back. And his first words were, "Whatever you do, don't kill it. There's a no-kill policy at the Scottish Parliament." As I'm dripping with blood.
The bit I love most about that is, for anyone observing this, all they saw was you fish this tiny, fluffy chick out of a bin, march off to a porta cabin, to which point there was screaming, a loud thud, and then you emerging covered in blood.
Gets better. It gets so much better.
How?
So he says to me on the phone, whatever it is, don't kill it, just remove it. And I'm like, too fucking late, mate. Fucking its head caved in. I was like, it's in my technician's bag. And he's like, oh fuck. And this contract was worth a hell of a lot of money at the time. And there's a crowd outside. So I put it in my bag, zipped up my bag, hung up on him because he was shouting and swearing at me. And I walked out like this. I was like, shh. Into my van, and I fucking drove quicker than you can imagine. Never to be seen again. The second time was after the roof caved in, and there was pigeons got into the main kind of foyer of the Parliament where the MSPs sit, or were duty sit, because it hadn't even opened at the time. And we're like, well, there's nothing we can do about this. You've got a no-kill policy. What do you want us to do? Sit here for 13 hours a day trying to haze them out? And they're like, yeah, just kill them, as long as nobody knows. So
he says, repeating the story on a
Billy produces his hammer. The herring gull hammer.
I'm going to get sued come Monday. Our technical team at the time with this national company, they only let us use intrinsically safe ammunition, which was a little plastic ammunition with a little pinhead.
Like the Prometheus.
That was the word I was looking for, yeah. Which are rubbish for shooting pigeons, because they just go straight through them. They're rubbish for dropping pigeons. So we shot the first pigeon, and it flew around the auditorium, spewing out blood all over the chairs, all over the First Minister's seat, all over the lovely oak desks. So that was a good few grand clean up.
I was about to say, but did you manage to upsell a disinfection service after that?
I don't know. I ran at that point. I was out the door.
He wasn't allowed back, was he?
So there seems to be a running theme here, which is you turn up, you just obliterate a flying animal.
You asked me for the bloopers. You asked me for. Yeah. There are loads more. There are a lot more.
To be fair, Sean asked you. I think it's a fairly telling sort of like bit of psychology here, which I'm just like, good news stories, collaboration, happy news. Sean, what's your question? When did you fuck up last?
When did you fuck up last, Sean?
It's never happened. We do everything correctly and easily.
Yeah.
Don't ask us about what happened to me thumb, because we're not talking about that. Do you know what it is, though? The blood thing. I've had that before. I shot a pigeon in a very, very expensive car dealership. Actually, I can tell you a story now because we don't do it anymore. I went up one night and luckily I'd spoken to the bloke. I said, we're going to have to come in and shoot it. He said, well, I said, listen, I'm going to have to move it around. And this was what saved us. I said, we're going to need a metal backdrop. I can't shoot it in case we hit your windows and da. And he said, that's really good for you to point that out, because the last time we broke the window, it cost us some like $6,000 to get the pane replaced. And about 3 months, we couldn't get anyone to do it. So I said, don't worry. This is why we only do it on metal backdrops. I went up that night, sitting on top of a thing, and I hit it. And it must have just took this absolutely weird deflection, came down and hit the window right on the joint and shattered the window. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake, like, broke the fucking window. Yeah. So I put the pigeon in the motor and fucked off. And I went up in the morning to say to them, listen, it was a freak accident and I broke your window. Just so happened that Storm Arwen hit that night. And when I pulled in, they were stood there, they went, that Storm Arwen's been horrendous. And now it hasn't. They went, yeah, it's pulled trees out, it's smashed this, it smashed the window up there. And I went, just left it at that. Storm Arwen got the blame for the broken window. Like, how lucky that Storm Arwen just happened to hit at the same night that I smashed the $6,000 window. I never said I didn't do it. I never tried to get out of it. I just never really put my hands up and said I'd done it. You know, it happens.
Looking in the comments. Looking in the comments, all of people's malfunctions seem to occur around pigeons, don't they? We've got you. Yeah, pigeon who shot a pigeon in a multi-story car park, only for it to come tumbling out of the air and splat on someone's windscreen on the exit barrier. Darren Garvey shot a pigeon in Urban Outfitters years ago. Pigeon didn't drop instantly. Clothes are now covered in blood. Yeah, Hugh, oh God, I got to put this one up. Hugh Radford used to shoot in a paper mill whilst people were working. A pigeon fell onto one of the big paper rollers. It's literally painted onto 3 miles of paper.
If anyone hasn't shot pigeons before, the one thing I would say to them, and I'm sure Billy will back us up on this, it's all right having a metal backdrop, but make sure you can clean it as well, because often the blood will just go straight throughout the back on it, and you'll have like splatters up windows at like 15 meters, which you can't get to anymore because the shiny floor won't take a ladder, blah, blah, blah. And the people who you try to hide it from, the cleaners and the staff, come in and there's like fucking blood splattered up the window. And you're like, oh.
I've just thought another absolute belter when it comes to pigeons, which isn't so gruesome, but still hilarious. I don't know if you remember.
We're going to be facing cancel culture here, right? Absolutely. These stories are getting progressively just hit us with your next pigeon story, please.
This one's not that bad. It's just fucking funny. When President Trump was in power and he was coming to the UK, he flew into Prestwick Airport because he was visiting his golf course in Ayrshire. So I had the contract at the time for the air traffic services building at Prestwick. And I don't have the contract anymore, but I've still got a great relationship with the management team there, and did have at the time. But I've got 2 stories. I've got 2 great stories. So, President Trump was due in that day, and they were like, "Whatever you do, don't bring a gun with you to site because you'll not get in." I'm like, "Well, fine." So I was on my way to Prestwick and I got a phone call from another client who was doing a pigeon trapping job for at the time. They're like, "There's a single pigeon in your trap. One of the secretaries is going off her nut. Can you come and get it?" So I was like, "Fucking hell, I've got a meeting at Prestwick at 2. I was like, "Fine." So nipped in quickly, got the pigeon, smacked it in the head, put it in the back of my pickup at the time I was driving. And drove airside for my meeting with the head of technical at Air Traffic Services for NATS. And he's like, "Right, so we need a quick summary of bird numbers before, Air Force One flies in. She's flying in like 6 hours. Just need something for you to say. We'll take a few pictures. That'll be it." So they wanted a picture of me standing with my Falcon at the time and with the acoustic distress collar. So I opened the back of my vehicle. a vehicle, and this pigeon had came back to life and suddenly just flew away onto the fucking runway and just fucking collapsed, fucking dead. And I'm like, well, there's one more.
Oh no. To be fair, as soon as you said Air Force One was coming down and,
Yeah.
no guns, I thought that story was taking a very different tact. I thought this was going to
Well,
be just
The next one's worse to do with that same contract. When I first took on that
God.
contract in 2012, it wasn't long after that the Malaysian Airlines plane went missing. You remember that was all over the news. The plane just vanished into thin air. So when that happened, all of the UK airports had fighter jets stationed at them in case this aircraft was going to be used in a terror attack.
Hmm.
And I was in there twice a week as my part of my routine bird control contract, and I arrived at Prestwick, and it was usually a case of into security, search your vehicle, sign in, and when you signed in, it was like you were going on holiday. You went through all the rigmarole, security scanners, etc. So I arrived this day, and instead of that, they're just like, you need to go to the technical manager's office right now. And I'm like, oh, something's happened. Something bad's happened. Like, no, just go up and see him. It's fine. I was like, want me to go through security? No, just bypass. And when they ask you to bypass security, air traffic services, something bad's happened. You're in trouble. So I went into this guy's office who I had a great relationship with. And he's sitting at his office looking very, what was that word you said earlier? What was the
Studious.
word? Studious. He was looking extremely studious. And there's a chap standing behind him to this day who I do not know who he was. And he's sitting with a paper in his hand. He's like, does your Falcon have a transmitter on it? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, is it on 173 frequency? I'm like, yeah. He's like, did you not think to tell us? I was like, why? He's like, look at this. And he handed me a bit of paper, which was a fucking great image, by the way, of me and my Falcon flying at the like 2 days previous, which was taken from a fighter jet above Prestwick Airport, which had been scrambled at the cost of about 25 grand because there had been a frequency detected. He said to me, he says you were 2 clearance levels away from being engaged.
Oh, you would have got the Burt and you wouldn't have heard the second one at all, would you?
Yeah. It was a cracking photo as well. And I said to him, I says, can I keep that photo? He's like, no.
Oh, that's a shame. But I mean, that's perfect. That's so do you tell people now that you've got your frequency transmitter on, or do you
No, because we
just
use
long
GPS.
for another day?
We didn't use a frequency. Well, we do, but we use GPS now. It's all on our phones. There's nothing to do with antennas and, But yeah, that was an eye-opener. It was a wee eye-opener at the time. I kept the contract for another 10 years. So it couldn't have been that bad.
I love shit like that. So where are you going to take Scotica then, or where's Scotica going to go? Are you going to employ people? Are you going to stay on your own? Are you going to?
I was very close to employing someone just before the pandemic, literally just before the pandemic, and I dodged a bullet big time as a small business, not having an employee on the books during that time. So it's kind of put the frighteners up me. And to be honest, as I said earlier, I'm a pest controller. I'm not a great businessman. I'm not a great. I probably struggle to work for myself sometimes. Never mind someone else work for me. And the type of work that I do as well is, everything from fleas to deer, as I says. It's very diverse. Trying to get a technician or trying to recruit a technician who would tick all the right boxes. I'm friends with a lot of company owners up here, or guys who run companies for who are involved with management bigger companies, and they all struggle with recruitment. I don't know if that's just north of the border. I don't know if it's UK wide, but it's a big issue. And that's for routine pest control. Never mind wildlife management and hawking and stuff, which I do. So, right at the moment,
considered going into partnership. You mentioned there's a couple of other sole traders out there, and you've all got your diversifications, but at the same time, there is an overlap, and that's where the strain hits hardest, is hitting those routines.
Yeah.
Not taking on a member of staff and not going and joining another company, but starting up a partnership. And there are a couple, across the nation of companies that go into more formal collaborations rather than just that. So, would that be anything you'd ever consider?
Absolutely. I do a lot of work for other companies, without a doubt. National companies, smaller companies, one-man bands. I collaborate with on a regular basis. I don't know if it's maybe just a Scottish thing, but there's never been that formal agreement yet. Again, it maybe goes back to the whole. It's quite cutthroat, this industry. This all might just be in Scotland. Maybe the rest of the UK is absolutely fine.
To be honest with you, buddy, I know you think it's just this one, but my brother's a Sparky, and I know lads and all that, drainage work and all that. Every industry's exactly the same. It's all cut. Always got someone who's willing to do it for a little bit less to try and get the sale. And
I think every company wants the edge. Every company wants to be the company, especially your larger companies with maybe a dozen employees or more. They didn't really want to to be partnered with anyone because they didn't want to. They don't want their customers to think that they need to partner with someone else because they're it. So I think there's a bit of that going on. There's maybe even a bit of that going on with myself. I've been self-employed 15 years. I'm quite proud of what I've achieved. I still love seeing my logo. I mean, the video that you put on this afternoon, the Scotica Wildlife Solutions logo, I was fucking buzzing, So there's a part of me which wants to remain a bit more independent, So certainly doesn't stop me from collaborating with other companies and making money. It's a massive part of what I do, is doing work for other people. Not just the falconry side, the wildlife stuff. Sometimes even catching a wasp nest, which might be on my doorstep, which they didn't want to send someone from Glasgow or Edinburgh from. It's all about building those relationships with people. For running a small business.
Oh, sorry again. There's like half a second delay, so
no, on you go.
You had a pause. I jumped in. We kind of touched on this earlier before we came online. We're talking about different jobs and different bits and bobs there. You said you do a fair amount of you're doing more and more residential work this day.
I don't do a lot compared to most guys, but I do more now than I ever have. But in the grand scheme of things, probably very little as far as your routine guys go.
Because we started talking about this, and actually, having a look at the time, I think it's worth bringing up again because we had some fairly sort of like interesting points just offline, and to bring them back onto that, which is working, and you say it's the relationships that you build with people, and nothing is truer than when you are stepping into someone's home when they are potentially at the lowest point of their day, week, month, year, life to date. And it's a fairly privileged position to be in. And that was the sound of my dog vomiting on the floor behind me. Shit. Sorry. So back on track. We're talking. Fuck.
I want to know why you've got a green screen up, Alex. I think you're sitting in a lap dancing bar somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
You're not at home. That wasn't your dog.
Yeah, that's it. It's a different bit of rough. Back to residentials. Yeah, we're talking about it, and it's a privilege to be able to help people out when they're at their lowest, but also it can be a real danger in some instances, isn't it? Because we're almost all lone workers. And we were just talking about horror stories just literally, 5 minutes ago. And there's some serious risks to us and people in our profession when we get into these situations. And just thoughts on that, because we had thoughts earlier.
It's as I said to you earlier, it's probably something that's more in my frame of mind now than it's ever been, just because I am doing a bit more residential than I've ever done. It's always been in there in the back of my head, because I think I'm quite I'm a worst case scenario thinker anyway. I'm quite risk averse. And regardless of Tracy's what, mental health's a big deal now, and kids who are growing up these days, it could be argued, are maybe more susceptible to mental health issues and anxiety and things. They're going to be our customers in 10 and 15 years, So how do we safeguard ourselves, as well as, make sure, we're not taking advantage of them. They feel safe when someone enters their house. And that'll not just be a pest control industry thing, that'll be an entire, services industry thing, as Sean was saying, electricians and stuff. That's going to need to be something that everyone addresses. And when I started doing more residential stuff, I got my health and safety guy. I outsourced my health and safety stuff. I got him to write up a risk assessment and method statement I'm able to ping over on my phone to any residential client I'm going to visit now. But the problem I'm finding with that is they don't fill it out, and they're I'm still going ahead and doing their visit because they're expecting me, So it's potentially a bit of a minefield at the moment. In the next 10 to 15 years, I think it's going to be a much bigger issue than it is now, to be honest.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to form almost part of our terms and conditions if we could get it sort of, not a method statement, risk assessment written up, but something that is sent through to them prior to arrival, just about that. This is what we'll do when we turn up. This is how we'll behave. We will be wearing. I think you're right. There's more and more people, more and more industries now wearing body cams, aren't there?
Yeah.
Like, end up starting to wear them to talk to people, and
yeah. You can never satisfy all avenues, though, when you're visiting someone's home. I mean, someone who would be quite happy and maybe feel more secure in you wearing a body cam, you would visit next door and they would see it as an intrusion of their privacy, So it's finding that that balance, which is going to be the difficult thing. I'm lucky that I didn't really rely on domestics, and probably in the grand scheme of things do very, very little of it. But yeah, it's definitely going to be something in the future, something everybody's going to need to think about a bit more.
I tell you what, it was a sobering thought when you just said there, the kids of today are going to be our customers in the next 10 to 15 years, because they're either hot little lights or absolutely wet as a damn fish, aren't they?
Yeah.
In between.
Yeah. So from one point of view, right, they're this sounds awful, right? They're going to be, they're so naive and they're so wet, as you say, behind the ears, that there's still plenty of customers out there that will tackle a rat on their own, or will tackle a mouse infestation in their property on their own. Fair enough, more power to them. In years to come, all that's going to disappear. And someone told me, or did I read it somewhere, that is it something like 25% of our industry is due to retire in the next 10 years? Did I read that in a BPCA thing somewhere?
Yeah, it's more than that. I think it's 60% plus in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, but here's a question though. They say that. Has that not always been the case though? Do we not always consistently populate our industry with older guys who are ready for retirement, who get like 10, 15, 20 years out of it and then they're off?
Probably, but it's the generational thing which makes a difference for me with when people retire, and it's what's acceptable to these generations. And as I say, there seems to be a generation coming up now which is very, they want solutions at a touch of the button on their phone, be it social media, be it services, food, just eat, you know. And they're going to have us arriving at their door who are telling them that we're going to need to spend 3 or 4, 8 visits sorting their rat problem, and they are not going to be happy, and they're going to be scared stiff. So, yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah, but with that, you are going to get more work, and they are going to be less capable of dealing with it, aren't they? But you're right. I don't know any young men who go out ferreting now. Do you? Like when I was a kid, I wasn't the only one. It was constant, you know, fishing, da da da. Like now, my little boys play Fortnite.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stand up for the younger generation here, clearly because I am the youngest one here.
I'd be careful. I'd be very careful.
I may even be the oldest one out of us here. But the reality is, are young people less capable, or is it the fact that with technology we simply just see the stupidity of young people? And if we were to be very honest about life, when we were their age, we did equally dumb shit, but nobody recorded us doing it. And there probably was an equal number of our friends who would have been unwilling to deal with rats and mice and go out ferreting and the rest of it. It's just the case of now we have a very vocal group of very vocal generation who is able to have a platform, able to have it say, and able to sort of like be very visible. And the reality of it is they're saying the same dumb shit that we were, only nobody could hear us back then because we were getting drunk on tins of cider in the woods where nobody could see us. Whereas these guys are doing it on, you know, with their mobile phones in hands, you know, no respite, no hiding. So is it a generational thing, or is every generation? Sure, if you talk to the boomers, Hugh, you're listening to us. Sorry, Hugh. But you would probably say the same thing about, Gen X. Who a lot of us sit into. We were the first of the generations to be involved with the internet, and I'm sure loads of people looked at us and just said, spent all day sat there instead of working the fields, sat at a computer. And yet there's very easily an equal number of us out there doing this job and doing it well.
I think it's a bit of both. That there is without a doubt more exposure to news and to information data. We've got more at our fingertips now than we have ever been. But the behavioural changes as well as in the younger generations, because they've got that exposure and because of what they're exposed to constantly. I mean, everyone either experienced or witnessed bullying at school. Right, without a doubt, I would challenge anyone who either wasn't a victim of it or seen it when they were at primary school or high school. Right, when kids go home now, it's it's on their phone. They're getting WhatsApped or Facebooked, or that's going to have an effect on them growing up, and that's going to have an effect on how they behave as adults. So it's a bit of both. We're much more aware of the problem because it's at our fingertips in our news feeds all the time. But it is actually happening. I'd done a job. I went to do a shoot maybe about a year ago at a farmyard with a farming family who had been on this farm for over 100 years. And the daughter had a fucking panic attack because I pulled out a rifle, And I'm like, what is wrong with her? And her dad, who typical proper old Scottish farmers, like, young ones, she can't hack it. And I'm like,
I thought you were going to say the dad said she was expecting to see a hammer.
I know I shouldn't have told that story. So yeah, they are less capable of. I'm saying they as if they're a object, but you know what I mean. There's the generation that they've got that much access to information, that much access to everything they want or need or think that they need. Sometimes reality life is different, and they can't cope with that. They won't. That'll be difficult for them, and sorry, we're already seeing that, you know. But as I say, it's not going to just be a pest control industry thing. It's going to be a service industry thing in general. You know, how we go about dealing with these people. You see it in, like, you see it on social media already, like hairdressers or barbers. Is it okay if I touch your head? You know, and like us lot are like, well, how the fuck are you going to cut the hair if you didn't touch their head? But they're
Obviously,
like,
me, I'm not like that, Billy. Are
them were the
Alex
days.
might have that conversation. I'm
No,
pretty
no. The
confident.
irony here is
I could be a
the irony
fucking
here
beard
is you
trim.
two
It could be a
don't,
beard
and
trim.
you know. It could go for a beard trim. Yeah, but so I think the irony is you two can't, and I just don't. So there we go. But to loop this round to a more sort of like good news story, because we started on the funny shit, then we somehow managed to get very somber, and now let's try and bring it back up again.
Went round dark.
We fucking let's ride this way back up again. We talked about the fact that most of us are going to retire. How do you think we can get more young people into this industry? You know, how do you think we can get that enthusiasm for, as you said, ferreting? I was about to say dogging, but that would be the wrong term, for ferreting, for falconry, for maybe for all of these more traditional pursuits. How can we get a younger generation who is, as you say, more into Fortnite and more into their consoles and iPhones into the real world? What can we do?
I honestly do not know. I think the pandemic probably brought an interest into kind of public health that wasn't there before in general, because it literally, you know what, the general public care about nothing until it affects them directly. You know. Global warming, for example, you know. The pandemic affected everyone, so suddenly people were more concerned about the waste management of their properties. People started complaining more about, hygiene facilities. So there was a bit more of an interest in public health and public hygiene, which I think public health pest control was part of. And I think maybe young grads who were maybe coming out of university maybe thought to themselves, maybe public health pest control wouldn't be a bad thing, rather than marine biology, for example, As far as the general public go, as far as maybe the kind of work that I do, wildlife management, deer management and things, it's very emotive. It is very emotive. It always has been, as long as I've been in this industry. I remember when I've had my shotgun certificate since I was 12, and I remember at 9 years old telling my mum that I wanted to have a 410 shotgun, and she literally, you'd think I was the Antichrist, And if anything, that's got a hell of a lot worse. There's a lot more access to a lot of the bad sides of firearms, and veganism's taken off massively. If Chris Packham could have his way, none of us would be killing rats or mice or cockroaches or anything. We'd all just be living in harmony. So
do you see that in the Netherlands not so long ago? A couple of the Dutch ministers have been advocating a course of coexistence with urban rodents rather than actual any kind of population management in urban areas. And I think that's going to be a wonderful thing for Amsterdam to try. So the rest of Europe and the UK can turn around and watch that go, how we all absolutely know that's going to go. But yeah, you're right. It's a really different changing landscape. And the thing is,
it really is.
sadly, person kept Oh, am I still here?
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, sorry, I just got a really weird feedback on my thing. It's going to be an interesting sort of like, isn't it, changing dynamic, and whether or not we want to embrace it, or, as you say, yourself and Stuart, more and more chemical-free solutions. And that's a change with the times, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I look at other countries, America and Canada and things, and how they approach their wildlife management, and how they approach even their public health pest control. If you visit a pest control company, a small family-owned pest control company, for example, in the States or in Canada, they operate very differently from us. The domestic market is huge over there compared to here, and it's all culture. It's culturally different. Killing things is more socially acceptable in the States and in Canada than it is in the UK. Pure and simple, in my opinion. I genuinely, as far as the whole field sports side of it, which sometimes integrates into pest control, your ferreting and your urban fox control and stuff goes, we have 100%, and this might be a really unpopular opinion, I might get some flack off the guys, but bear in mind, I'm a recreational shooter and hunter as well. We have seen the best of it. It's looking glum, and as far as integrating that into business and stuff's concerned, it's specialist at the moment. The advert for me coming on here today was specialist wildlife management. 50 years ago in this industry, probably most vermin catchers, as they were called, had a dog who they'd use for killing rats, had a rifle in the back of the van they'd use for shooting stuff most days, would routinely kill rabbits, moles and stuff like that. At the moment, there's probably technicians out there who've never held an air rifle. It's just not the done thing now. It's not what public health pest control is. So as far as enticing newcomers into this, I think anybody who's going to do what I do in the future will probably be, taking the same path as me. They will be doing it anyway, and somehow get involved through getting a job at a national company or a company like mine and doing it for a living when they've got the skills. I don't know. I genuinely didn't think what I do for pest control and wildlife management, it's mainstream at the moment, but I think it's going to look very different in 10 years' time. But we've not only got public opinion against us, we've got legislation. It's changing all the time. Social media has had a massive impact, the ability for people to see what we're doing. There's no getting away from it. Sometimes, even in public health pest control, be it me shooting a deer or a mouse eating a storm block, the end result is a dead animal, and the public do not like that, and they do not want to see it.
Yeah, but here's a question for you. If we got rid of grouse shooting, probably pheasant and partridge shooting, maybe some trophy shooting of deer, etc., the stuff that people do for fun, if that was ruled out of the equation, would people then start to see what we do as a necessity? Because at the minute, I think they feel like we do this because we enjoy killing shit the same way that people who go...
No.
I don't think so.
In my opinion, no. I'll tell you a couple of... I'll make a couple of interesting points. Someone who will quite happily come and have me bash a rat on the head with a hammer in their kitchen because there's a rat in their kitchen, will the following day, fill out a petition online about banning grouse shooting or banning something like that. I done a job a few years ago now, for a massive poultry outfit in Scotland, and there was foxes getting into a shed killing poultry. And it was mismanagement of the premises that had done it, but the problem was there and it needed to be resolved. And we removed about 9 foxes in 2 days. And the following day, I'm watching the operations manager who had got me in, who had stood there and laughed as the work was getting done and cheering how well it was going. He was posting anti-animal rights stuff, animal rights propaganda on Facebook. So people are not pragmatic in their thinking when it comes to animals, and they're not pragmatic in their thinking when it comes to food. So if we banned trophy hunting and grouse shooting, for example, what would happen was when deer do not become valuable because their antlers aren't worth something on an American guy's wall, we just kill them all. And when grouse didn't become valuable because we can't charge £200 for shooting a pair of them, they stop being managed, so they just die out through predation. So it's not good for animal welfare, and it's certainly not good for wildlife, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, absolutely.
The public can be very fickle in their thinking sometimes, and very. Again, this might be another confrontational statement, but see, a lot of the people that actually have an opinion on things, they're the type of people who don't fill out, they'll not complete an online form for public opinion. The most political people on my Facebook status never voted at the general election because they think it's beneath them, you know. And that's our biggest, in my opinion, that's one of our biggest challenges going forward, is when we're dealing with ultimately the killing of animals and the killing of wildlife in the next 10, 20 years. If you go into Chris Packham's Facebook page, you'll see him wearing a t-shirt saying "Live amongst rats." You know, that's now. What's it going to be like in 20 years? You know, so
it's so interesting to think this, and the irony of it is, and I'm not denying that the next 10 years are going to have some excitement for us, but if you go back 10 years, it was a similar thing. So go back 10 years and we didn't have stewardship, did we? It was stewardship was just being talked about. So of course anyone could buy any volume of 50 ppm bait that they liked. There was no stewardship, and then suddenly we had that. And then go back 10 years before that, so the early 2000s, we would have had a whole load of different insecticides out there for sure. Some of them just coming off the market. You go a little bit further back than that, you've actually got some of the second generations only just starting to hit the market between the late 80s. A little bit, you go back in 10-year chunks, a little bit longer than that. And pest control changes radically every 10 years or so. And because we are in it, this close to it, we see this change as being the change, the thing that is going to affect pest control going forwards. But of course, if you look back and you realize that actually we're tremendously adaptable, because shit has changed a lot. So I would argue, it's going to change. But if you don't, then what can you do?
But pest control is also, as I say, that I've been in the industry nearly 20 years now. And I am by far not the most capable pest controller ever, but I'm not the worst. And there's things that I see in the industry, and it's interesting that you've said that things change every kind of 10 years. I agree, but I think it's a lot. You get things like I think AI is going to change pest control big time. I think smart traps, rightfully so, are going to change pest control big time. I can't wait for all that technology to come in. I'm looking forward to it, but it's going to revamp the place. But at the same time, we've got the black cat trap, which, in my opinion, has made my life so much fucking easier. Everyone should be using them constantly. Which, and that the design of that trap is 160 years old. And someone in China or wherever it was decided to make a version of it. And they are fantastic compared to our traditional snap traps and stuff, So that technology has been there all the time. I got a funny comment the other day on one of my waste management sites, because I was walking through the site and I had a thermal imager in my hand looking for pigeons up in the rafters of essentially a waste shed the size of a football field. And I had a Harris hawk in one hand, all my hawking gear on. I had an air rifle on my back and a thermal imager. And the guy's like, "You look like Robo Pest Control or something, like Robocop." And I'm thinking, well, I've got a pest control solution which is for like 200 BC on my hand. I've got a 2.2 air rifle for the must be for like the mid-90s. Air rifles have been in existence since the 20s or the 30s, and I'm using a thermal imager which is literally 2 years old and cost me more than the deposit on some people's houses. You know, that's how diverse pest control is these days, you know. And all these little revolutions come along, like, you know, intelligent bird scarers, for example, which, let me tell you, are extremely unintelligent. And yeah, we see all these. Another thing I see is guys coming into the industry who, like myself, have maybe had a bit of pest control experience and, you know, recreationally, and they come in to the industry. They do, you know, fairly well for a few years, and they suddenly think they're revolutionising pest control with an idea or something they've done. And they're like, well, no, we're doing this 10, 15 years ago, you know. It's so diverse. It's so. I mean, why did no one come up with a black cat trap idea 10 years ago, 15 years ago? You know, it's probably one of the most common traps used in the UK right now for rat control.
Was I tell you who brought that over? It was he's been on as a guest.
Is he?
His name's yeah. He brought it over. No, he hasn't been on as a guest. It was Darren George. He brought them over from India, I believe, or wherever it was.
Yeah.
He was a distributor, and then Kilgerm approached them, and they basically said, unless you can guarantee buying this many traps off us, we're going to sell them to Kilgerm, and Kilgerm took it. So that was a Darren George. That was a one-man band who spotted something and went, this could work, and shipped them over. Because they're originally called Tombstones, weren't they? Tombstone rat trap.
I've got a couple. I collect antique traps, and I've got a couple of the original Tombstone traps. And it's so simple, but so effective, you know.
Yeah.
So how many other designs are out there which do the same, you know? When I was researching for coming on here about spring traps and stuff, I give rat tail samples and fox carcasses to our kind of agricultural science agency for the Scottish government, and this guy, SASA, and the wildlife biologist who I give that stuff to done a paper on spring traps, and I've been in this industry for 20 years, and I read his paper on the spring traps, and there's traps in there that I've never heard of, which are amazing ideas, which just are not in production anymore, you know. And you know, to me, that's innovation. You know, and our industry bodies have you know, award ceremonies, and they give out innovation awards to large companies. Always seems to be the same companies. Some of the listeners might agree with me. Always seems to be the same companies for, you know, having electric vans.
Johnny has something really interesting about our awards. We had a podcast on awards, and we said that the general consensus was we are going to try and go with them rather than against them. And I certainly nominated a number of people. I know other people who nominated people. All the people who were nominated that I know of who were nominated did not get shortlisted.
Yeah. Don't know what to say about that.
I don't think we need to say any more about it, do we? And for me, I can't believe that they didn't watch that podcast, the people who are doing the awards. Maybe they didn't. Maybe it's not that important. That being said, it absolutely sickens me that because everything, if anyone watches that podcast back, it just confirms for me, whether I'm right or wrong, whether it's an internal bias, I don't know. But for me, you said it. I don't know what to say about that. It just confirms everything that you think before that happens, you know. And you're like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, am I ever going to nominate anybody again for an award?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, nepotism and all that stuff, it's human nature, and it will exist in every industry. You know, pest control isn't special for that. You know, there's business relationships go on, etc., etc. But it doesn't half dishearten companies like mine, businesses like mine. And you know, I would never ask someone to put me forward or put someone else forward for an award, probably in the back of what you've just said, because you're right, and everybody knows it, you know. And I didn't want to be pessimistic about it, but that's been going on for a long time. And the awards, you know, there's no explanation. I mean, this might sound a bit kind of mediocre and maybe a bit petty, but there used to be a forum online called the Hunting Life Forum.
I was a member, yeah.
Years ago, it was huge, and it was, you know, field sports based. There was falconry, shooting, wildfowling, rat catchers, dogs, you know, running dogs, things like that. And they used to have these little, you know, competitions. It would be, right, let's see who posts the rat with the longest tail. You know, the posts that used to go up, there would be like 400 and 500 strong. You know, people would get right into it, and it was because it was obtainable. It was a photo posted on a forum where it would be measured and everyone could see it. I don't know why the latest national company won the award for being Big Company of the Year. Don't know what they've done for that, but they've won it.
What about the EDI?
Won the Sustainability Award, but they've won it. You know?
The EDI Award. The EDI Award?
I'm trying not to get sued, but...
Hang on. You can't try not to get sued after telling us those stories earlier. I mean, if anything, tonight's trajectory has very much been one of pending litigation. So...
there was no names.
I know you both have. I know you both have views on the EDI culture, which is kind of why I did bring up the, you know, bringing young people into the industry thing, because that's very much a facet of, you know, certainly if we're not talking about the diversity aspect of it, it is the equality and inclusion part of it, is getting young people involved. But yes, skirt the line of litigation and give us your thoughts.
I honestly don't know. I think that this industry often attracts people anyway. And again, I'm being confrontational. I can't help it. But you can be qualified to buy rodenticide in this industry within 3 hours. You sit in a course. Can you be a qualified sparky or a plumber in 3 hours? You know, you could be out there running a business and charging people for pest control after sitting in your house for the afternoon. And that often attracts maybe the wrong type of people to this industry. I can't talk from my own experience because I didn't employ anyone, but I know a lot of other people that I'm friends with and I'm involved with. The turnover in pest control technicians and kind of medium to large businesses is huge. It's enormous. Why is that? You know?
There's a number of reasons, isn't there? And you know, it always amazes me, like, that I never considered before I become an employer, that we only ever look at the reasons why we have a large turnover from the employee's mindset. Like when COVID hit and people got put on furlough, there was a lot of people, there was a lot of companies there who took that opportunity to clear out the dead wood in their thing. And if you've got a van full of gear, when gear isn't working anymore, you get rid of it and and there's always that changeover. But as an employee, you always expect a lot more loyalty from your employer than often they are willing to give. Like, not just in this industry, but all industries, I watch it. And as an employer, the one thing you can't do, and I can say this because I'm lucky I've got 2 good lads and I'm not going through it. And that's why I'm saying it, because if I was, you couldn't see it. But I'm sure there's lots of people out there where it's like, oh, I left him because he was shit. And the employer's probably sitting there thinking, thank fucking God, what a pain in the arse. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think that we need to attract people. But this is my problem with the EDI thing. We need to attract the right people. We need to attract people who want to be pest controllers, who have that keen insight into it. And my whole issue with it is, if we then start to try and positively attract particular people who don't really want to do it, then I think you will end up even more so in the massive turnover as people get the knickers in a twist and don't want to do it and then they leave the industry. And I just think you've got to let it find its own level. I feel like the level's good in this industry. I feel like we've got a brilliant industry, and that's the truth. I love the industry. And I love people in it.
I've seen people come into this industry almost by accident with no prior experience and turn into really very capable pest control technicians. And I've climbed the ladder through to management and stuff, you know. So I feel like I'm kind of complaining for the industry being too accessible. It's not always a bad thing, you know, because maybe that opportunity wouldn't exist in another industry for people to, you know, climb the ladder and be so successful and learn. We're definitely a great industry as far as opportunities for learning is concerned. But again, I think it's maybe just the service industry thing, and like Sean was saying with Sparkies and stuff, maybe it's all the same. Maybe the nepotism and the backroom dealing and you know, as I said to you earlier on, like 3 or 4 of the most capable, you know, expert pest controllers that I know hold mediocre positions within the companies that they currently work in, and they didn't feel valued and they're not valued, you know.
It's because, I can tell you why, and I can tell you why I think that is. It's because when you start employing people, your number one concern is making sure that they can always pay their mortgage. Like not you, like the staff. You want them to be able to pay their mortgage, and that's why it's sales driven. There has to be that turn. Often the people who are the most capable and competent aren't always the best salespeople. So like if you rely on them, then the business would go bust. You know, that's what I find is you need them. It's wrong that they don't feel wanted or capable, and probably could try to use them in a different way. But often with them guys, what they want to do is they want to come in, they want to do their own thing, they want to go to work. They use guys who want to be left alone to just get on with it, which is fine if you're feeding them the work. But then when they've got to find the work, everything becomes a little bit more complicated. So it is, you definitely do have to support them. There's no doubt about it. You need them. Saying that, you know, I was talking to Alex, what's the guy called who had Pest to Kill before it was sold out? Dark-haired bloke.
Shoot. I know exactly who it is. I can't.
He's a lovely bloke.
Remember.
Yeah. So me, him, and Colin, Dave Clements, and Colin Harrison were sitting on a table at a do one night, and I was talking to him about it, and he said to me, he said, in your workforce, if you want to grow as a business, you need 2 killers out of 10. The other 8 need to be box kickers. You know, and he had this. That was his sort of makeup of it. You need lads who'll just go out and do it, and you need a couple who will go out and solve it and get stuck in. And that was his makeup. Because I remember saying, I want 10 killers. I want 10 lads who can do that. And he said, it just doesn't work, son. It doesn't work. And he'll absolutely know what the score is.
Yeah, it's the scalpel and the chainsaw. I heard that in a podcast a few weeks ago. In every service business, you need scalpels and you need chainsaws. And sometimes the salespeople and the technical inspectors and the compliance and the quality inspectors are the scalpels. But if you've got a pigeon and it flying about a Scottish Parliament and it needs fucking killed, you send a fucking chainsaw. You know, they all have their place in this industry, but they are valued differently, which causes resentment, I think.
You are a football team, aren't you? Made up of goalkeepers, defenders, fielders, and forwards, aren't you? And there's not one going to win it, but
I think there's a difference here between value differently, because they're obviously valued by their companies. It's repatriated, paid, you know, differently. Or that may not be the case at all. But I know for a fact that there are some people who are very, very good at pest management, but you would not give them charge of a group of people because they are unable to. You wouldn't put them at the front of the charge because they'd run off without telling anyone what they're doing. You'd be like, okay. And we all know someone like that. Absolutely, you know, or a hammer. But that's it. It's working in a company is more than just being good at the one thing that you do. It's about being good at all of
everything.
The things.
I got right into social media marketing for a while, to the point where I was like, I love this. I love creating video content and stuff. And I'm thinking, so I could do this for a living. In hindsight, it would be a fucking disaster. But I think that's part of running a small business. You have to do a little bit of everything, and some of them you enjoy, and some of them you despise.
And I kind of think you've kind of hit it on the head. You've said it twice already, which is you delegate a lot of work out. Despite the fact you were a sole trader on your own, you delegate it out to third parties and other people. It's exactly the same inside a business, isn't it? Only you're not delegating it to a third party, you're delegating it to the person who can. And it's just a shame, as you say, that the people who are good, that those killers in there are not but how do you reward them? If you push them up the ladder, they stop being the scalpels that they are.
Sometimes I think those guys didn't really look for. They don't want to go up the ladder. Like I don't. At the moment, I didn't really want to employ anyone. I am perfectly happy. I've got a fairly comfortable lifestyle in a house that I've bought after running my own business. I probably earn more money now than I ever would working for anyone else. So, and they're the same working in their prospective companies. They earn a decent living, they can pay the mortgage and put food on the table. They didn't want to be a team leader, they didn't want to be a manager or area operations, whatever. But maybe they just want a bit of recognition, and I think that's where a lot of pest control and maybe service companies fail, and I think years ago, there used to be, employee of the month, employee of the week, or a bit of recognition when this job went well, when that netting job went well, or when this guy came out of his area to help Tim, who fucking her mum had died and had, got his area finished for the quarter. There is all that goes unrewarded, and I think that's,
I tell you what I do love,
I know that's everywhere.
I tell you what I absolutely love more than anything else. When a one-man band nominates himself every month for the social media post of the #1 employee, like deadly serious. I'd just like to nominate Sean has now won Employee of the Month for the 12th month of the year this year. He's doing really well, and he's outshone everybody else with his dedication to the cause. What we fucking on.
Apart from that 1 month between February and March where we had to have a little bit of a conversation. Yeah.
No, but it is, isn't it? Or when they're like, here's Sean from our guano cleaning team out today on a job, and then it's like, here's Sean from our rabbit control team out for a job. So like, fuck me, you've got a few Sean's working there, haven't you, lad?
I love that though. It is funny if you know, but bear in mind they're marketing to people who do not know.
Yeah.
I remember when I first went self-employed, I had literally my personal phone, and I put in on the answer service, thanks for calling. Someone will call you back within 5 hours, whatever. Yeah. And one of my mates phoned me. He's like, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" He's like, "Who's we?" And I'm like, "You don't fucking know." I says, "You know, but the person who calls me doesn't know." And I still do that to this day. I still call it the Scotica Wildlife Management Team. There is me.
Yep.
And by the way,
do that.
I've done very well.
Yeah. Took the entire team out for pizza the other night. It was great.
The Christmas do was a bit shit on it. Looked like a little bit of a weirdo. You know what I mean?
HR had to be called. There's an inappropriate touching.
I infiltrate my clients' Christmas nights out now. I almost sometimes feel like I'm in the waste management industry because I get like 4 different Christmas nights out every year.
Yeah. Well, we've went 1 minute 50, which is a lot more. That means we need to get you back on, Billy, at some point. To be fair, I love these podcasts with a bit of crack to them. I love them. I think they're the best ones. So thank you very much.
No worries.
We've got 3 questions for you. Do you want to go first one, Al?
Yeah, well, let me bring the questions.
I've done it. I'm fast.
Well, fast as fuck, boy. Right. So, number 1, have you enjoyed your time on the podcast so far?
It's been fucking terrible. Spoke about nothing that I wanted to talk about. I've not spoke about any of my big wildlife management jobs that I've got the post-it notes on about here for. I spoke about none of that. It's fucking awful.
Nobody asked you to bring up Hammergate. I'm going to be honest. You could have used that time as an opportunity to talk about what you like, but go on. We
Give
love
us
the
a
Hammergate
shameless
more than
plug.
anything else.
It's been fine. It's been fine.
Yeah. Give
Loved
us a
it.
shameless plug then, Bill.
A shameless plug. Scotica Wildlife Solutions for all your professional pest control in central Scotland.
What would be what's your one sweet spot, the one thing that you would love to do more of?
You're going to laugh. Probably less public health pest control and more conservation management pest control, ecology-based stuff, which I do a bit of anyway, but I would quite like to be involved in more conservation and ecology and wildlife stuff than food premises and things, if that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel that one, absolutely. And then finally, who would you like to get on the podcast?
Thought about this one, without a doubt, Bobby Corrigan, the rodentologist.
He is a constant request, I have to say.
Get him on.
But
Get him on.
Get him on. Well, we've had Andy on. Andy, you are still listening, or you're listening back to this. Give us some contact details for Bobby, and
I can get you contact details for Bobby Corrigan. Leave it with me. I can get you. No problem.
Do it. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
He suddenly squeaked in a high.
Stuart Blair's like a fanboy of Bobby Corrigan, and they message each other late on a Saturday night. So I'll get his contact details off of Stuart. Him and Bobby like to cuddle in the back of taxis in America.
That's the story. Stuart is listening. We've seen him here. He's commented already. So
he's
if you
not,
wouldn't mind, just as yeah, he's commented a couple of times. So with that, there he is. Keep that stuff. No, do it.
But Stuart's on first name terms with Bobby Corrigan, which I think's immense. So
it is immense. Yes,
we'll get his details. Yeah.
Okay. I kind of feel like I should push this, and at another time I've seen what a cracking shot that Stuart is with a rifle, and I'm pretty certain. Wait, what was that face for? Is he not?
Kind of maybe an air pistol or something, water pistol maybe.
Spud gun. Stuart,
he loves technology, and he loves technology because he can blame it for missing.
Okay. I feel a bit safer now. That's all right. Oh, Billy, thank you ever so much for coming on.
No worries. God bless.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.